All right, everyone, it is 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in Kingston, so I think it's the prime opportunity to go ahead and begin our session. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're coming to us from. My name is Don Ames. I'm the Manager of Admissions and Recruitment with the Graduate Diploma in Immigration and Citizenship Law. I'm going to be providing today's webinar. I'm just going to be reviewing the application information session webinar that I've produced. We just held one recently, a few weeks ago. If you've joined us for that session, you're joining us again, you just want more information, welcome back. And for all of those who are newly joining us, who hasn't attended any of these webinars in the past, welcome. This is going to be a really great informative session for you in regards to the Graduate Diploma in Immigration and Citizenship Law, or GDipICL for short, and the admission process. I'm new into the role. I've been here for just over, I believe, 7 months now, but we've already been through a pretty extensive review session for the fall 2022 new incoming class for our program. And there's a lot of information that I want to provide to you in regards to applying to our program, the admission process, what's required of you, and then what you'll be expecting from us in regards to the entire admission process and our assessment. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. If you are experiencing technical issues, there's nothing we can do to control that on our end. What we ask you to do is log out, then log back in again. You will be seeing my screen here in a little bit with the presentation. If you don't see that, again, try logging out, coming back in. If you still are having issues, maybe try restarting the device that you're on, whether it's laptop or a handheld device, and come back in. If there's still not an issue, if you're still unable to see the presentation or even hear the presentation, there will be a video of this session provided via our Facebook page at a later date. We don't know the exact date that's going to be put up, but what I'd really encourage you to do is to like our Facebook page, and we'll submit the link at the end of this presentation via the chat, and go ahead and follow along there. Once the video is uploaded, you'll be able to rewatch the session. We've disabled the chat. All of the information that we're going to be providing is going to be directly from me to you through video and audio. We do have a Q&A section though, and as I've been kind of commenting here for those who came into the presentation early, we're not going to be asking for questions or we're not going to be asking for Q&A at this point. We're going to ask you to hold all of your questions until we call for the questions at about probably the midway point of the presentation. I also see that people are raising their hands. We're not going to be doing anything through audio means. We're not going to be asking you to unmute your mic or to submit questions that way. Everything's going to be coming in through the Q&A box, and we're going to ask for those at a later point. So right now, there's no need to raise your hand, and please don't submit any questions. We're going to be utilizing the Q&A at a later point. And a lot of my presentation is hopefully going to cover the information that you may be asking. So just be aware of that. So I'm going to go ahead and resume my share again. You should be seeing the presentation at this point. I'll go ahead and move over to the next slide here. So what we must begin today's session with is an acknowledgement of the unceded Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee land that Queen's University occupies in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. We conduct this land acknowledgement to begin all of our sessions to always remind ourselves of the history and recognition of the atrocities perpetrated against the Indigenous peoples of Canada. We must not forget, but we also must not only acknowledge. We must act, we must reconcile, and we must ensure that appropriate measures are taken to move forward together. But we never forget. Today, there is still much work to be done, and this acknowledgement is but one piece of the Queen's University's commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusivity. If you'd like to learn more about Queen's and our EDII focus, I encourage everyone to review the various Indigenous departments across campus and their websites, such as the Office of Indigenous Initiatives, the Four Directions Indigenous Student Center, or the principal's website, where the principal does have a lot of information about our EDII focus. So thank you very much for that. So here's our webinar agenda for today. I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the GDipICL program itself, what the benefits are, what our intentions are in devising this program. Then we're going to spend the majority of our time looking at the application process. We're going to look at admission requirements, the application itself, key dates and deadlines, and I'm going to go through each individual item within the application that is really important for you to be aware of. These are the things that you must submit to us in order to receive a proper assessment. Then I'm going to talk about next steps. And at that point, we're then going to open up the Q&A and we'll go through some frequently asked questions. There's some key things that we seem to always receive via our inbox or through these webinars. And I'm going to try and clarify those as much as possible ahead of time. So again, as we go through this presentation, I'm asking everybody to not use the Q&A box at this point. We'll get to that stage shortly. I promise you, you will have an opportunity to ask your questions. Also, you'll have an opportunity to upvote questions that you see in the Q&A box that you want answered. So if somebody else has submitted something that you also want to hear from, I'm going to review the top voted questions in the Q&A box, and I'm going to respond to those directly here through the audio medium. So go ahead, and if you don't have any questions, look for some questions that other people have, upvote those, but you will be able to submit your questions later on in the presentation. So please just hold on. So let's talk a little bit about the GDipICL. So our graduate diploma is a proper grad school program at Queen's University here in Kingston, Ontario. We are a program that's delivered entirely online, and that's one of the big questions that we always receive. And this program, even though it started during the pandemic, the early days of the pandemic, our program was always intended to be a virtual program. That was the intention of it. It's a really great opportunity to educate individuals across the entire country, if not the globe. And it really does allow for really in-depth, interesting learning from world-renowned course instructors on the topics of immigration and citizenship law from the comfort of your own home. There's no need to move to Kingston, Ontario, or even to Canada if you're an international member of this of the attendee list today to take this program. And it's really important that we stress that the virtual component of this is a huge benefit for our learners. You're going to be interacting with lots of great instructors, world-renowned experts, people who are famous in their field from wherever you are located. And it should really alleviate a lot of the pressures that typical university students experience when it comes to taking a program. You don't have to think about housing or meal plans or things like that. You're doing your graduate studies wherever you're located. And we really do take advantage of that through our OnQ online platform. It's really innovative. It allows for really great in-depth learning. And again, it's a lot of our program is going to be directed through your own sort of self-directed study. You'll be controlling the pace of your own education through your readings, your online assignments, your quizzes, your tests. And the only thing that you have to be live for in our program are the mandatory 2-hour tutorials that you have per week per course that you're taking. So for example, for our incoming class in fall 2022, or for yourselves, if you're applying for winter 2023, when you first start the program, you're only going to be taking one course to kick off. It's ICL 810. It's our introductory 12-week intensive course, which is shrunk down to 6 weeks. So for those 6 weeks, you'll have a 2-hour tutorial every single week. And that's the only component you need to be live for. Everything else is done through self-directed learning, your own, your studies, your readings, your tutorial, not your tutorials, your quizzes, your assignments. And you have timeframes that you have to stick to, but it's really going to be a great opportunity for you to utilize your time management skills and your ability to just kind of understand how you go about your education. This is the only English language pathway to be eligible to write the Regulated Canadian Immigration Consultants Entry to Practice exam with the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, or the college for short. So that was kind of a big thing that Queen's really wanted to take advantage of. So there was a call for regulation within the immigration consultants industry. And the college at the time, they were called the ICCRC, they called for submissions for educational partners to design a program that would be that educational pathway to help with the regulation of the industry. And Queen's was the successful bidder. And now we have a partner institution, the University de Montreal, which does the French language pathway, but the Queen's University's program is the only English language pathway. If you are interested in becoming a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, or an RCIC for short, you have to take our program, and that's the only way that you'll be eligible to write the entry to practice exam. There's lots of additional information that happens during a student study with our program and getting prepared for the entry to practice exam or the EPE, but much of that will be covered when you become a student in our program. But just know that if you're interested in becoming that regulated Canadian immigration consultant, this is the program for you. But of course, this isn't the only way that you would really take advantage of our program. For those who aren't interested in becoming RCICs, if you're utilizing this program to just educate yourself on immigration and citizenship law in Canada, it's a fantastic program. There are really great courses and instructors who are going to be providing fantastic information for individuals who really just want to learn more about the industry, who want to utilize this education in maybe private business. Maybe you're an individual who does a lot of international hiring and you want to support your new staff members with understanding of the Canadian immigration system. If you're a paralegal and you want to really kind of further your education there. If you're a current lawyer and you really want to utilize this education to assist your clients, there's lots of great pathways, not only just to become an RCIC, but to utilize the education here with this program and to make it work for you. So lots of great information. What I encourage you to do is to make sure that you're reviewing our website. There's lots of really great information on our program website, and I'll be providing those links later on in the chat at the very end of this session, just so that you know where you can go to review what's there and to really educate yourself about what the program's about, what the courses are like, who our instructors are, and a lot more. So, of course, a lot of people that we hear from, they are interested in becoming regulated Canadian immigration consultants. And this is kind of the typical path that we're seeing here. You start as an applicant, you work your way through the admission process, you become a student, you go through the coursework, you complete our 9 courses, you then graduate from the program. And at that point, you're eligible, hopefully, for the college's EPE. So at that point, you're ready to write the EPE to become an RCIC. But of course, we need you to get from that first point into the program, which is what the purpose of this session is. It's to educate you on the application process, the admission requirements, and what you need to provide to us in order to be ready for the program. And that's where we are right now. We're here to kind of provide you with some solid information about what to expect as an applicant for the GDipICL. So we currently have 2 admission cycles per year that we focus on. So we have winter and fall. So as I mentioned, me and my team, we've just been coming out of the fall 2022 assessment period. We've been doing a lot of application reviews. We're getting ready to submit information to our applicants for fall 2022 here in late June, early July. Don't know if anybody in the attendees list is already an applicant of our program waiting for information. Thank you for joining us. There's not going to be much information for you in this. We're not going to be providing any details about the fall 2022 class list or where our process is for that. But if you do have any questions in regards to that, if you are an applicant for the program, you can reach out to us at a later point via email. Hopefully we can assist. But again, we are getting ready to submit all of our information in late June, early July for that class. But right now we have 1 application open, and it's for winter 2023. So that's a January 2023 start time for brand new students into our program. The application is currently open. We opened that application on May 1st, and it's going to close August 1st. So there is a chance for those who are in attendance today who want to apply to our program to apply for a winter start. We also have the fall admission cycle. So we do open our application again on October 1st for fall 2023. So again, September 2023 entry. That application lasts a little bit longer. It goes from October until April 1st. And we do accept a bigger class for fall versus winter, but it really, the admission standards are exactly the same. So all of the information, no matter when you're going to be interested in applying for our program, is going to be relevant to you from today's session. There are different types of applications. I'm seeing a couple of questions come into the Q&A. Just hold off on those for now. Please don't utilize the Q&A. A lot of these things are probably going to be clarified throughout the presentation. So just hold off on the Q&A box right now, and just hopefully I can resolve any of those questions through my presentation today. So as I mentioned, there are several different types of applicants. So there's full-time and part-time and just standard entry into the program. There's access pathway applicants. So those are individuals who need a little bit of additional support when it comes to their application, and more information on that will be provided later on in the presentation. And then there's interest students for program credit or for no program credit. Those ones I'm going to cover first. Interest students are basically individuals who want to take a little bit of our program, maybe just for some professional development opportunities, specifically those who are there for no program credit. Those are individuals who just want to take upwards of 4 classes and, again, just want to do it for their own personal benefit or professional benefit. Typically, what we see from the individuals who attend these sessions or who email us their questions, they're interested in the pathway to become a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and they want to look at full-time or part-time entry into our program. So we'll cover that more in-depthly throughout this presentation. Interest students, you apply via our GDipICL program website. There's a Qualtrics survey application that you submit, and all other applicants apply through the School of Graduate Studies website. So keep that in mind. If you're applying for interest, you go through our program site. If you're applying for regular entry into the program, you apply through the School of Graduate Studies application system. So it's really important you know what type of individual or what type of applicant you are. If you are applying via the School of Graduate Studies application system, there is an application fee of $110. Make sure that you are applying correctly and that you don't submit your application early, because once that application is submitted and your fee is paid, that's it. Unfortunately, we're unable to make changes. And if you were trying to apply as an interest student, but you applied incorrectly, we can't return that money to you. So again, it's really key to know what type of application you're applying for, you're utilizing, what type of student you are. So again, full-time and part-time, they're applying for direct entry into the program. You're applying via the SGS or School of Graduate Studies application site. And these are the individuals who have to meet all of our admission criteria and deliver all necessary documents. Access pathways, that's a little bit of a different means of getting into the program. Access pathway applicants, they need to apply via the access pathway if they don't quite meet the admission standards for the program. And I'll get into that, like I mentioned, a little bit later. But there's an additional requirement for access pathway applicants. You have to submit an additional document, which is your professional resume. And I'll outline that later on. But just know that it's the same system for both. It's the SGS application site. One of the key things that I really want to reiterate here is that you only apply once to our program. We've seen in the past that people will apply multiple times throughout the application cycle, even for the same intake. So for winter 2023, we may potentially see someone apply 2 or 3 times. It's really key that you only apply once. And the way that you make sure that everything is all involved in that one application and you submitted everything correctly is to be patient with your application, to review the documents that's available, to listen to attend these sessions, to ask us any questions in our office, and then submit everything all at once. And like I mentioned, once you pay your application fee, that's it. Your application is into us. So just be mindful that you have everything ready to go with your application. So let's talk a little bit about the application. And this is going to be the main focus of our presentation today. It's going to be kind of breaking down the key elements that you need to provide with your application or after you submit your application. So there are various elements of the application within the School of Graduate Studies site, even on our interest student application. We mirror a lot of this information there as well. So there's personal information. Of course, we ask for your name, we ask for your birth date, all of that information. We ask for your program details. Are you applying as a full-time or part-time student? And are you trying to provide an access pathway application for us? We ask you 2 personal statement of interest questions. So these are questions that help us understand who you are. And you utilize these spots to tell us what your motivation is to apply for our program. And what are you going to do after you graduate from the program? So those are the two questions. We give you the questions ahead of time so you can start crafting your answers in your own voice, in your own way ahead of time. And it's really important to understand that this is the only way that we're going to understand who you are. It's the materials that are provided through the application system. So make sure that you're speaking in your own voice and you are providing your interest and your excitement. You're telling us why this program really interests you. What is your motivation for applying? And then we want to know what your plans are afterwards. Are you looking at becoming an RCIC? Are you looking at opening your own business? Are you looking at utilizing this education in many different ways? We want to hear from you. You work on those questions. And what I really encourage you to do is you take the questions, you put them into Word, and you work on them there so that you can craft an exact kind of statement that you want to provide that meets the maximum word count that we allow. We only allow for you to include about 150 to 200 words per statement, roughly about 2,000 characters per response. So we need you to be really sort of focused in on what you're providing to us so that we get a sense of who you are in a very short period of time. Like I mentioned, there is an access pathway consideration question. So on the application, there's a question that just says, are you applying via the access pathway? Yes or no. You simply add that in. You don't expand any further. I'll get into details of that a little bit later, but it does allow a different pathway for those individuals who may need it to be considered for admission. Then you also enter your references. We'll talk about references a little bit more in detail again later on in this presentation, but you provide your reference information here and they receive emails with forms that they fill out at that point. So really important to know who your references are going to be ahead of time, having kind of a conversation with those references so that they know information is coming to them, and then being prepared to reply to them if they have any questions, or just following up with them to make sure that they submit their documents on your behalf. Then at the end of the application is the sign off and payment. But let's go into detail about each of the different items that we require for a standard application to our program. The first thing we want to cover are transcripts. Transcripts is the most important element, I would say, in regards to the assessment, because what you need to have in regards to our program's admission standards is a completed undergraduate degree from an accredited university with a B average. And the only way that we're going to know if you've achieved that is through successful submission of your transcripts. And I'm talking about all of your post-secondary transcripts. We don't need to see high school. We need to focus on post-secondary. Specifically, we need to see anything that you've attempted or completed at the university or college level. So that includes bachelor's, master's, PhD studies, as well as 2-year and 3-year diploma studies at accredited college programs. It's really important that you are able to upload these transcripts with your application. It's the easiest way for us to conduct an admission review if you've already provided your documents. The way that you do that is by taking any of the documents that you currently have. So maybe you already have finalized transcripts from all of your undergraduate studies, and you're able to scan them PDF format. They're all in English, and you scan them black and white. You can upload those with your application. You basically get to list on the application where you've attended, and you upload those transcripts. So say, for example, we have an individual who's applied to our program, who's completed their bachelor's at York University here in Ontario, and their master's at UBC in British Columbia. We need to see both of those transcripts. Even if you think, well, I've completed my master's degree, do I really need to submit my bachelor's? We need to see everything. It is important for us to see every single document that you have in your possession, because it gives us a fulsome perspective about how you're doing in your undergraduate program. So what you do is, if you have these transcripts, great, go ahead and scan them and upload them with your application. If you don't have these transcripts in your possession, before you apply, I encourage everyone to start speaking with their previous post-secondary institutions. All of them. Talk to them and gain access to your transcripts. If you can acquire copies of your transcripts, you can scan them, or if they send them in PDF format, which would be fantastic, you can just upload them with your application, and then that process is done. Now, every student who gains entry into our program has to have official documents sent directly to the School of Graduate Studies office by your previous post-secondary institution, but that's not the admission process. The admission process does allow for you to upload transcripts with your application. So make sure that you have those documents ready to go. And you can submit things via different methods if you haven't already submitted them with your application, as is outlined here. So if you didn't upload things with your application, you can have your institution send them directly to the School of Graduate Studies office via email, fax, or physical mail. And all of this information can be found on the School of Graduate Studies application site. There's a little section called Step 2, compile the documentation. It outlines items there. But again, the easiest method for you to submit transcripts is via the submission, the upload process with your application. And when I talk about transcripts, I'm talking about documents that look like this. This is an example of it's a fake transcript, but it's exactly what we're looking for. We need to see something on official letterhead, or at least have a seal associated with it, a signature associated with it from somebody in that registrar's office. It outlines the courses that you've taken, the credits that were acquired, and the GPA or grade or average that you achieved in each of those courses. Now, of course, we're dealing with a lot of international transcripts. We cannot provide you with pre-assessments. We don't do that in our program. None of the programs do that. We don't provide pre-assessments on if your program is accredited or what your GPA is if you're admissible into the program. We have methods behind the scenes to do our assessments for all institutions around the globe. What I encourage you to do is to make sure that your transcripts are uploaded with your application. They're clear, they're really legible. And if you are able to, scan the back as well if there's items on the back. If your transcript comes with its own GPA transcript legend, if there's a way that we can translate things to the Queen's GPA, make sure you include that as well. But just make sure that your transcripts document the courses that you've taken and the grades that you've received, as well that you've received the credential that's listed there. Or if you've attempted something and you didn't complete the program. So say, for example, we have an applicant who attended York University, started their first year, but didn't finish it. They transferred over to Queen's, for example. You have to submit both the York and the Queen's transcript so we can see what your progression has been from each of these different institutions. So again, we can't provide information ahead of time. You just have to kind of review your transcript and submit it with your application. These are not transcripts. These are not things that we can accept. The item on the left is basically a copy of an degree or a diploma, just the statement that they've received it. We need to see that item that outlines the courses you've taken and the grades you've received. We also don't accept WES assessments in place of transcripts. We can accept WES documents to support your application, and you can upload them with your transcripts, but we also must see documents that look like this. You need both. And if you have attended international institutions and it's difficult to acquire those documents, it's going to take time. The fortunate thing is that if you're starting this process now, you have time. You don't have to submit documents until September 15th. Obviously, we want you to submit them earlier, and we want you to submit them with your application prior to August 1st, but you do have some time to submit your documents. We just really encourage you that you begin talking with your institutions now, and that's all of them. Talk to these individuals, talk to the registrar's office, start acquiring documents so that you can upload them with your application. Here's another note on transcripts. What we're seeing is that we don't get a fulsome picture because people aren't providing all of their transcripts listed. We need to see everything that you've done, not just your most recent, not your highest level. So if you've completed a PhD and you don't submit your bachelor's or master's, we need to see all of them. We need to see everything that you've completed. We also need to see transcripts from any exchange programs that you've done. So if you did a study abroad year to the UK and you received grades there, if your home institution transcript doesn't outline the grades that you've received and the GPA or the average, we need to see the transcripts from that study abroad program. So make sure you include that. Letter of permission studies. If you did 1 or 2 courses throughout a term and you did that, say, at the University of Montreal, we need to see that transcript as well. Incomplete programs attempted. If you started something and you transferred out, or if you started something and you didn't finish, That's okay. We just need to see that transcript. You need to submit it with your application. You need to outline when it was done, what you attempted, and then you need to upload that transcript as well. We also need to see anything where you get transfer credit. So if you did start a program somewhere and you transferred credit over to a new program, again, that example of going from York to Queen's University. If you don't provide that York University transcript, we can't complete an assessment. We need to see your entire history of post-secondary study. So make sure that you include everything completed or attempted. We also take into consideration 2-year and 3-year diploma programs from accredited colleges. So make sure you include those. And again, all university study has to be included. We need to see everything that you've done. And again, if you're unable to submit your own transcripts, so if you were unable to acquire your transcripts in preparation for the application, you still had to submit by the August 1st deadline, make sure that you do get your post-secondary institutions to deliver that to Queen's University. And you can do that via email. They would send an email directly from the registrar's office at your home institution to grad.studies@queensu.ca. They can fax it, or they can send it via physical mail. So really important that you highlight everything that you've done. I cannot be more clear on this. This is the most important element of the application, not only your personal information and the details that you provide there, but we need to see your transcripts. Let's talk about the second most kind of talked about item when it comes to the application, and that's English language proficiency tests, or ELPTs for short. So there are several of our applicants who are required to provide an English language proficiency test score, or an ELPT score, with their application to be assessed. But there are 3 considerations or conditions that we provide exemptions for. So number 1 is if you are a native English speaker. So you've been speaking English as your primary language for your entire life. You did not learn English as a second language. Those are individuals where you are a native English speaker. And there's lots of countries around the world where English is the primary language. And we welcome you to add that to your application. If that's not the case, you still have some opportunities to be exempt from the ELPT score requirement. Number 2 is you've attended full-time studies at an accredited university within 12 months of your application in which the education was provided solely in English. So for individuals who are applying for winter 2023, you have to basically have been in a program at a university full-time, no older than 2021. So keep that in mind. 2020 and beyond doesn't count, doesn't meet the requirements for the ELPT exemption. So really keep that in mind. And again, it's full-time studies at a university. College programs don't meet the exemption. Also, for individuals who have taken English for academic purposes at different institutions, those also aren't taken into consideration. You need to have done full-time studies within 12 months of the date of your application in English at a university. The other exemption requirement here is a little bit different. It's if you want to participate in the Queen's School of English ESLA 150 English for Academic Purposes program. So this program, it doesn't make you exempt from submitting an ELPT score. It's basically the program that you would take at Queen's to allow you to then bridge into our program. We don't offer this for winter applicants. So as of our upcoming application right now, we aren't offering ESLA 150 for winter applicants. We're only offering it for fall. So if you are interested in taking our Queen's School of English program, you would wait for a fall application to open, so October 1st, and you would note that on the application. At that point, you'd still have to submit all of your documents. And if we do deem that you would be eligible for our program, and the only outstanding item is that English language proficiency requirement, and you want to take the ESLA 150 program, you would be granted a conditional offer of admission. At that point, you receive the offer, you accept it. In the fall, you'll begin study in ESLA 150, and you won't technically be starting in our program until winter of the following year. And again, you have to meet some very specific requirements from the program. And I really do encourage you to research that. It's very different than just providing us an English language proficiency test score. It's a lot more expensive and it's a lot more laborious. Of course, you're taking a full term of study, but it is available for individuals who want to take that pathway. Again, though, it is easier to just take an ELPT, submit your score, and definitely take a look at it that way. I do see a question come in, just how much is it? It's roughly about $5,300 in comparison to an ELPT score, which will probably cost you anywhere between $240 and $300. So a bit of a difference there. It is available online. There's actually going to be a specific program for our students that happens in the fall. That's going to be a virtual program. But again, it is really something that you should be really thinking about. And we're not going to be taking many students through that program. So just keep that in mind. It's easier to take the ELPT if you're required. So if you meet those exemption requirements, if you meet one of them, if your native language is English, great. If you've done study, if you've just come out of a full-time university program, think about that as well. Basically what you do is in question 4 of the application, you basically just copy and paste one of these two statements. It's English is my native language, or I meet the requirements for an exemption. You copy that into the text box and you provide that. Don't write anything additional into that text box and we'll be able to conduct our review. We may still request an ELPT score from any applicant. Our admission team, our admission committee, I should say, does reserve the right to request an ELPT if they feel that the requirement is still there. So keep that in mind. It's better to be more safe than sorry. So start thinking about ELPTs if you don't meet those exemptions, or if you do, and maybe you do need to consider submitting your scores. If you don't meet the exemption in that same question, there's a selection that you copy and paste in there, and then at a later point, you submit your scores. Scores must be submitted by the document deadline, which for winter will be September 15th. And we only accept certain test scores. So here are the approved ones that we accept: CAIL, IELTS Academic, and TOEFL, both the internet-based test and the paper-based test. Now, we know that a lot of people who are permanent residents, who have just recently immigrated to Canada, who have conducted kind of all this process with ICRC, you have your IELTS general. We don't accept that. So just keep that in mind. We also don't accept many of the other tests that are out there, such as CELPIP, Duolingo. We don't accept those ones. These are the only ones that we accept. So look into those. On our program website, we link directly to these sites. So just make sure that you submit and you review what the admission requirements are. For each of them, they're different. For CAIL, you need an overall 70. For IELTS Academic, you need an overall 7.5 with no band lower than 7. No, I believe it's overall 7 with no band lower than 7. So there's 4 different breakdowns there for IELTS Academic. Each one has to be at 7 or higher for you to be admitted. For TOEFL, I believe it's an overall score of 101 on the internet-based test. I believe it's 601 for the paper-based test, but all of those requirements can be found on our program website. If you've already done an ELPT and you have a test score that's less than 24 months old from the date of your application, you can submit them so long as they are the approved ones that we accept. So maybe you've already taken a CAIL CE, go ahead and submit that. We definitely do welcome that if it's less than 2 years old. If it's older than 2 years, you're going to have to go ahead and retake that and resubmit it. And there are different ways to submit each of your different test scores. So for CAIL, you just basically have CAIL submit them directly to the School of Graduate Studies with your registration number and PIN. For IELTS, you go ahead and you submit your TRF directly to grad.studies@queensu.ca. And then for TOEFL, again, you contact the test center, you provide them the institution code, and then that information is sent to the grad.studies@queensu.ca, and they'll be able to access it. So keep that in mind. Again, the tests that we don't accept: IELTS General, CELPIP, Duolingo. There's lots of other ones that are out there that we don't accept. The only ones we do accept are CAIL CE, the IELTS Academic, and the TOEFL IBT or PBT. So again, it's a requirement. It really is important to make sure that you have this stuff ready to go with your application. One final note, ELPT scores are required for the admission assessment process. It's not something that we will provide a conditional offer once you submit them. We need to see this with your application, and they need to be submitted by the document deadline of September 15th. So make sure that if you do need to submit it, you're not waiting. You're not waiting for an answer from us. You're not waiting for a conditional offer. You have to submit this with your application. Let's talk about the next step here. So this is the other item on the application that's really important to understand, and it's the access pathway. So who should be considered under the, or who should be considering the access pathway? It really is important to understand what the difference is between a standard application and an access pathway application. For those individuals who are here, who you review your post-secondary studies and you think about how you did when you were going to college or university, and you didn't quite do as academically well as you would have wanted to. If you don't meet that B average, and again, you're going to have to kind of think about your studies and go back into your own transcripts and the time that you spent at university, and really think about how you did. Those are the individuals who should really consider access pathway applications. We've seen a lot of individuals who don't request access and who don't meet that B average. And it's really difficult. It's impossible for us to offer admission to individuals who don't request that consideration. And I really want to stress the importance of this. Isn't a prideful thing. This isn't a thing that you should be ashamed of utilizing or being afraid of utilizing. If you feel that you didn't do as academically well as you really wanted to when you were going through your post-secondary study, you really should consider the access pathway. The only additional requirement when it comes to access pathway applicants is the additional requirement of submitting your resume. And you submit that directly to the Immigration Diploma email inbox. We have our admissions committee, and they review access pathway applicants based off of not only the academics that they conducted, but also that professional experience. What we ask you is to outline at least 5 years of professional experience, and we try to see if it's relevant to immigration and citizenship law. That doesn't mean that we only accept individuals who have been through immigration or citizenship programs or jobs. We review all sorts of different backgrounds. We just want to see what you've been doing professionally that may make you a little bit different than when you were doing your studies. So really take into consideration your studies in university. Again, it's not something you should be ashamed of utilizing. It's a different pathway to gain admission into the program. And the reality is, hindsight's 2020. If I could go back and redo some of my courses when I was taking my undergraduate, I would, because I would do them differently and I would do them better with a different GPA. The same thing would be applicable to you. I mean, hopefully it's not. Hopefully you have a stellar GPA, but there is a pathway for individuals to gain access to our program who don't quite meet that B average. So really take that into consideration. Additionally, the access pathway are for people who didn't complete their bachelor's. If you have some university experience and you just didn't quite finish up your bachelor's, you can still apply to our program and utilize the access pathway to be considered. Also, for those individuals who took paralegal programs at the college level, you can utilize the access pathway for your education to really be utilized for the assessment process. So again, review the access pathway considerations. Don't feel ashamed to use it, because once we build our student class list for the incoming term, it doesn't matter if you're access or not, you just enter into the program. There's no additional requirements when it comes to getting into the program. Once you become a student, everybody has to achieve the B average or the B plus average in order to move on to the next term. Access is just a different way of getting into the program. The thing that we don't utilize access for are for ELPT scores that don't meet our admission requirement. Those will not be taken into consideration for access. You have to make sure that if you do need to submit an ELPT, that you meet the minimum admission requirements there. How can you be considered under the access pathway is a very easy process. Question 1 on the application, when it comes to the written responses, is our access pathway request. And you basically just copy, yes, I am applying via the access pathway. And then beyond the application, you send us an email with your resume, and that's it. You submit the exact same documents, all of your transcripts, an ELPT if it's required, your references as well. And that's as simple as that. And we are able to then take that into consideration and kind of review it with our admissions committee. For those of you who are wondering, a B average at Queen's is at minimum a 73% average on a 4.3 scale. So there are some ways to convert over a 4.0 scale or different scales from different institutions to know what that is. But again, we're not going to do any pre-assessments without an application. We have means for our team to do our assessment. So again, it's more about kind of inward thinking. Think about your time at your university and see if you really needed to request access consideration. The final component that I want to talk about when it comes to the application, and then we'll get into the frequently asked questions, are references. References are necessary for every single application, and everybody needs to submit 2 references. There are different types of references, though, that you can submit depending on your circumstances. If you've attended a post-secondary program within the last 5 years from the date of your application, you may use 2 different types of references. You may use one professional and one academic, or you could use 2 professional if you don't have an academic reference to provide. If you haven't attended a post-secondary institution within the last 5 years, you can submit 2 professional references. That's completely fine. Here's the definition between the 2, because we really need to make sure that you're submitting the appropriate reference. A professional reference is someone that we're looking for that was a manager or supervisor that you professionally worked with in either a paid or unpaid voluntary position. So it's somebody who could be deemed kind of your supervisor, your manager, somebody who manages the team or you directly. It's someone who can speak to your ability to work and communicate in a professional environment. And an academic reference is very, very similar, but more in the academic field. It's a professor, an instructor, a TA, someone who has had direct interaction with you in an academic setting, in a classroom, in a tutorial, through advisement, somebody at a university or at a college who can kind of speak about your ability to manage coursework, the requirements, committing yourself to your studies. That's who we want to hear from. We need to understand who you are from external perspectives as well. This is who you don't use as a reference. You don't use family members for references. If we see a family member come in, we'll have to request you to submit another reference. Same with coworkers who have not managed or supervised your work. You can't just pull in somebody who worked alongside you. It needs to be somebody who supervises you, who managed you in a professional setting. Don't use classmates and don't use friends. While they're great character references, and I'm sure they would be providing really great information about you, we definitely need to see professional references or academic references who are in a more supervisory or managerial role, someone who can provide information about your ability in both the classroom and the workplace. If you are having issues with accessing references, reach out to us. We do know that there are individuals applying to our program who haven't worked or who have not been in a post-secondary environment for a while, but maybe had a really good relationship with a person there. We can help with understanding the references that you want to provide, but for the majority of you, make sure that you're getting those professional and or academic references with your application. And make sure that you're providing those the details all up to date with your application at the time that you're ready to apply. The system, the School of Graduate Studies application system emails your references once you submit your application. So it's really important that you speak with your references, you tell them what the purpose of your interaction is, and making sure that they know that they're going to receive an email from our system and they're going to be providing documents on your behalf. So if they don't receive an email, if they don't see the email, if it goes to their junk mail, make sure that you follow up with them and that they're reviewing these things, because if a reference isn't submitted or if both references aren't submitted, your application won't be moved to us for review. So it really is important that you review those references, you speak with your references after you submit your application, you pay your fee, and they're receiving those emails. So be in contact with them, and also make sure that you log into the application system, because you can monitor when your references submit their documents. And if you see that one is sitting there for a week or two, reach back out to those individuals and talk to them. Ask them if they received the email. If you need something resent, you can reach back out to grad.studies@queensu.ca to help you with the references. It's really important that all of your applications are being moved to the application stage, to the completed stage, so that we get reviewed. Again, all of this information is really important, and this presentation will be made available via our Facebook page, so make sure you're watching there. But yet you're submitting all of your documents. You're getting things to us, your references are submitting their things, and we're able to provide a proper assessment with everything completed, especially those ELPTs and those transcripts. Make sure those are submitted effectively with your application. You may want to ask us direct questions. We're not going to be able to answer everything today. We'll do our best to answer the most common questions that we're seeing, but you may want to email us at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. But please note, like, we are in the middle of a pretty significant review or assessment period. It's going to take some time for email correspondence. And one of the real key things that you need to do is make sure that when you do apply, any email correspondence you have with us, you submit your application reference number. It's that long number there that's in the second paragraph. It usually starts with a 200 or a 202. We need to see that so that we can easily attach your question directly back to your application. So make sure that any of your email correspondence has that information in there, and you're asking very direct questions about your application. We urge you to read everything that you get from Queen's email wise. Make sure you add all of our email addresses to your safe senders list, and you're reviewing everything that you receive. The email that you're going to get from SGS when it comes to your application will have your login information. It'll have details about the application, timing, things like that. So make sure you review it. If you don't receive emails after you submit an application, check your junk and spam mail. Though they might have drifted there. Really is key. Everything that we're going to do is going to be via email. Queens and our program specifically, we're not doing phone or video conferencing support for applicants, for prospective students, or even current students. Like, there's just not enough time in a day to be able to provide information via phone or video call. All of the correspondence that we do is via email. So make sure you review everything that we send out. And if you do have any questions, you email us back. Right now, winter application is open, so that is what you can apply. But as I mentioned, fall application is going to open soon. It's going to open October 1st. And for those individuals who are interested in the ESLA 150 program, fall is going to be your application. So as we kind of work through this, it does take a lot of time for us to do our assessments, to get our admission committee reviewing all of the files, and then to build our class list. So it's going to take several months for our responses to come in, maybe from the point of your application. So the winter application is going to close August 1st. We're not notifying individuals about the success of their application until late November. So I really do urge you to have patience in this process. It really is important to take some time and await kind of word from us. We promise that every single completed application that we receive is going to get consideration. And we're going to be taking the time to review applications and responding back if something is missing. We hope that we don't have to do that too much. And for anybody who's in the session today who's applied for fall 2022, make sure that everything is complete, log into the system and make sure that everything had been submitted. We may have already been in contact with you if there are documents that are outstanding. So just make sure that all of that is available. And for anybody who's going to be applying for winter or fall in the near future, just make sure you have everything together and ready to go with your application. This is the time for questions. So go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A, but I've got some frequently asked questions here that we typically see. One of the major questions that we receive is the program online? It is delivered entirely online. There's no in-person requirement to our program. You don't have to transition to Canada or to Kingston to take this program. Also, how much does the program cost? So the total cost of the program is roughly $14,500. You pay per term. So for full-time students, you're taking 3 courses per term. So I believe the maximum that you're going to pay per term is about $5,200. That can be broken down in a payment plan. And there's also some funding availability through RBC's line of credit if you need support. Speaking of funding, we get this question a lot. Is our program OSAP eligible? We are not. Our program does not qualify for OSAP, and the only opportunity that we have available right now for funding support is the RBC line of credit, as well as full-time applicants should always apply for the GDipICL bursary through the Student Awards Office. That is available. That application is open now. So if you have applied for winter 2023 and you're a full-time applicant, go ahead and fill out the bursary application. We get this question a lot as well. Is this program postgraduate work permit eligible, or PGWP? We are not eligible for that permit, but it's also a requirement, or it is not a requirement of our program for you to have any study permit for our program. You can be an international student with no designation in Canada, and you can still take our program. So keep that in mind. Is this the only pathway to becoming a regulated Canadian immigration consultant? It is. Queen's University's GDipICL program is the only English language pathway for you to become eligible to take the entry to practice exam. So keep that in mind. I've completed a previous immigration consultant program. What do I do? So we get this question quite a bit. Individuals who, when this program was more openly available in the college system, a lot of people have taken it at various institutions. The first step that we would encourage you to do is to contact the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, see if you are still eligible to take the EPE. If you aren't, you're going to have to enroll in our program, complete our 9 courses, and graduate by completing each program with a B+ average minimum. At that point, you may be eligible to take the EPE. So again, speak with the college first if you've taken the immigration consultant program in the past. If they aren't allowing you to take the program, we aren't offering letters of academic standing. We're not offering transfer credit. You have to enroll in our program and complete it at that point. What English language proficiency tests do you accept? Again, we'll go over this. These are the tests that we accept: IELTS Academic, KLCE, and TOEFL, both paper-based and internet-based. And these are the tests that we don't accept: IELTS General, CELPIP, or Duolingo. I took my IELTS test in 2017. Is that accepted? It is not. ELPTs need to be no more than 2 years old from the date of your application. So if you were to apply on June 1st, 2022, your ELPT cannot be older than June 1st, 2020. So keep that in mind. How do you submit your ELPT scores? As mentioned, here are the methods. TOEFL, you contact TOEFL, give them the institution code, and they email Queen's. IELTS Academic, you provide your test report form number to grad.studies@queensu.ca. Only do this once you apply, of course. And KLCE, you just you contact Kale and you provide your registration number and PIN directly back to the School of Graduate Studies office. When is the deadline for submitting my documents? For winter 2023, it is going to be September 15th. So you have to apply prior to August 1st for our program. So hopefully you have your documents ready to go. If you don't, you can submit your documents up to September 15th, and we will still review your application as complete at that point. And again, make sure you have everything available, all of your transcripts, everything that you've done at the post-secondary level, you identify and you submit those transcripts. COVID is causing issues with transcript delivery. Of course, this is still the case for many institutions. What do? What you need to do is try to get in contact with your previous institution and find out how they are delivering transcripts, either directly to you or directly to the School of Graduate Studies office. If things are being sent to you, you can still utilize them for the admissions process, but be mindful that if you are accepted into the program, you do still have to provide official transcripts. And if you've received official transcripts from your post-secondary institution in a sealed envelope and you've opened them, they're no longer official. They're unofficial because they've been opened by you. You'll have to have them again resent by your institution directly to the School of Graduate Studies, or again to you. Just this time you'll need to have them sealed and send them over to the School of Graduate Studies, which is outlined here. So we really do encourage that whatever you have available, go ahead and submit. If you can access your transcripts prior to your application, that's really great. If you have PDF copies, upload them. But official documents can still be sent to the School of Graduate Studies office. So just be mindful of that. Again, ELPT exemption requirements. If you're a native English speaker, that's 1. If you've completed post-secondary studies on a full-time basis in English at an accredited university, that's 2. And the third is if you're interested in taking that Queen's School of English ESLA 150 program, but again, only for fall applicants. So for those who are applying to winter, that's not going to be possible for you. You can wait until October 1st when the fall application opens. And that's a completely different kind of process. So you'll be able to discuss that at that point by acknowledging if you are interested in that on the application. I'm an Access Pathway candidate. Is there anything else I need to do? Yes, you do. You need to submit your resume, a professional resume with at least 5 years of professional relevant experience outlined, and you send that resume directly to Immigration Diploma at queensu.ca. One of the things that we hear a lot about is there anyone to talk to in the program? They want to talk to a current student or a graduate. We have great testimonials on our website. We encourage you to utilize our main page as well as our program site to review what testimonials are provided. And that's pretty much it for the frequently asked questions. We're going to now kind of open up the floor here. You've been populating the Q&A, which is fantastic. And we'll go ahead and review these for a few more minutes. We have reached 4, but we will take a look at what's available. And again, if you wanted to review this video at a later point, you can go ahead and follow our Facebook page, facebook.com/QueensLaw GDipICL. We will be posting something soon. And of course, we really do encourage you to take a look at our program site, immigrationdiploma.queenslaw.ca. That will have all of the information there, breakdowns of tuition fees, course instructors, course outlines, admission requirements, everything is there. Definitely do encourage you to review those. And then if you're ready to apply, go ahead and apply. But let's start taking a look at the Q&A, and I will go ahead and respond to any that are highly upvoted. Good question here. What if you are self-employed? Who can you use as a reference? I would say anybody who would be a senior level client, somebody who you have worked with that isn't kind of a colleague would work. And again, for those individuals, you can email us with a little bit more information and we can be able to provide some support via email. All right, just going to take a look here. Winter classes will start on January. I believe it's January 4th. Don't quote me on the exact date, but winter courses do start on January 2023. Fall courses start September. Let's see if there's any other emails or any other questions that I can tackle here. So there's some questions going on about the class days. We don't typically get into that too much here in these sessions. There's a lot of information that's going to be provided to individuals who are successful in their application when it comes to courses and when they start. Typically, when it comes to tutorials, you have a selection of either a weeknight or a weekend tutorial, whatever fits your schedule. But keep in mind, our program is pretty intensive. It's grad school. It's a grad program. And for full-time students, you have to treat this like a full-time job. So just keep that in mind. Do we accept WES course-by-course evaluation reports for educational purposes? They don't meet the transcript requirements, but we will accept them in support of your application. You don't have to go out and pay for them. You don't have to get them for this program. If you have them already, you can provide them as support, but we do need to see your transcripts. The transcripts are going to be the most important thing when it comes to our assessment. Let's see if there's any other questions. I have a 9-to-5 job. Would you recommend a part-time student application, or I can take a full-time route? 9-to-5 jobs are really difficult. There's a lot of work involved. And again, it's a matter of when you're selecting your tutorials. I think you'd really have to consider what your options are. And again, I really do encourage you to review our program or think about our program like a full-time job. It is really important to be committed to your studies. And for full-time students, I mean, you complete it in a year. It's a lot to ask of individuals to give up kind of work commitments, but if you're committed to it, you'll have to really review what your options are at that point. For anybody who's asking questions about spots or seats or spaces in the programs, the only thing we provide is that the fall intake is a bigger intake than winter, and both fall and winter have very, very limited spaces for part-time students. So just keep that in mind. The difference between full-time and part-time in regards to length of study. So full-time students can complete this program in just under 12 months. So you take 3 courses per term for 3 consecutive terms. Part-time students can take this program up to 24 or even 36 months. So it can take a little bit longer to complete, but you take less courses or fewer courses. You take maybe 1 or 2 per term versus the maximum 3. So just keep that in mind. All right. Currently applying for the winter program, waiting on transcripts from the university to upload, but there is a chance that the school might send it directly to the school. What happens if my transcript is sent to the school before I submit my application? I would say for any individual who is concerned that they haven't applied yet, but they've already contacted their school to send transcripts directly to the School of Graduate Studies office, communicate with Grad Studies. They will take your transcript and apply it to your application, but just be in contact with them. You can still apply and submit. And again, I might still want to, if it were me, I would work with my previous post-secondary institution and get a PDF copy of my transcript and upload it with my application just to be doubly safe. All right, let's see if there's anything else. Can one shift from part-time to full-time at some point? Yes, that is a possibility, and vice versa, full-time to part-time. You would work with our program coordinators in the program itself once you become a student and you get into the studies and really understand what the commitments are, and you would be able to adjust dependent on approval of your study plan. So that is a possibility at a later point. I'm graduating December 2022. Can I still submit my application? That's a very good question. For anybody who's not going to have a final transcript by September 15th, I would not encourage you to apply for winter 2023. I would encourage you to apply for fall. We need to see final transcripts. We don't provide conditional offers of admission based on in-progress status. So we need to see everything finalized. So it's a little bit more of a wait for you, but again, you'll have more time to get all of your documents together and to really be considered for the program. The resume sent in the email should be in PDF format. That's the easiest way to do it. Word documents are fine, but PDF does kind of just take it to that extra, more secure level. Everything's then locked in at that point. So PDF is great, but if you can't convert it to PDF, Word document is fine as well. All right. For individuals who have done college programs, 2-year, 3-year diploma or advanced diploma programs who haven't done any university study, you can still apply. You would apply under the access pathway. Our program does require a completed undergraduate degree with a B average, but there is still the possibility of consideration with a diploma. So just keep that in mind. You'd have to really flesh out your resume and really utilize those application questions to the best of your ability. Tell us why you're motivated based off of your previous studies. And there's the possibility. Nothing is guaranteed though. So of course, in all applications, nothing is guaranteed. So just be mindful of that. Access pathway is the method for those individuals who have attended college, but not university. Certificate programs are a lot more difficult. That is not really a credential that we consider when it comes to the admission process. It really has to be a diploma or degree. If you've completed a certificate program, that's probably not going to be enough. You're going to have to really consider some additional studies or another pathway. So just keep that in mind. All English language proficiency test scores should be submitted with your application. So this is why I really stress you to understand the exemptions and if you meet the exemptions. I've already seen a few questions that come up in regards to, I've completed studies 5 years ago. That doesn't qualify for an exemption. I've studied 3 years ago, still doesn't qualify. I studied at a college, or I took a college ESL program. Those don't qualify. The exemption requirements are very specific. It's attendance full-time in a university program where English is the main point of study within 12 months. It's only 1 year from the point of your application. Really take a look at what the ELPT requirements are and get your scores ready with your application, or that can be submitted by the September 15th deadline. We're seeing that right now with the fall applications. ELPT scores are a huge component as to what's holding up some applications. So we don't want you to fall into the same problem. Really make sure that you're reviewing what the requirements are and you're providing those ELPT scores as soon as you can. See if there's any others I'm going to probably wrap this session up at 4:15. There's no possible way we could answer all of your questions. We appreciate everyone's questions and interest. This is a fantastic group here. We will, again, be posting this video at a later point. And of course, you can always email us with your questions. You're going to have to probably wait a little bit. As I mentioned, we are in the midst of getting our class list ready for fall 2022. So it might take a little bit of time for us to get to you, but we do have a really great team of individuals here that are working away at both fall 2022 and winter 2023 students. So just keep that in mind. I'm currently enrolled in a master's program in the University of Windsor. Will I be exempt from English? Master's programs are at an accredited university, so those would count towards completion so long as they're full-time studies. So just keep that in mind. I graduated in 2016, have all my transcripts with me. Can I submit them in PDF form along with my application? That is correct. If you have your transcripts, if you possess your all of your post-secondary transcripts, you have all of your undergraduate, your graduate, your college, whatever you've done at the post-secondary level. If you have those transcripts, scan them, PDF format, English, both sided, if there is information on the backside, and some transcripts do have that, submit them. You can upload them with your application. Again, official documents would only need to be submitted by your institution if you are unable to provide them at the time of your application. And then for all students, if you haven't already submitted official documents, or if your post-secondary institutions haven't submitted them, they will need to be submitted at that point. So keep that in mind. If a person has completed a bachelor's degree with a B- average, needs to have a minimum of 5 years experience, or is it required from the people who don't have completed bachelor's? Anybody who applies via the access pathway must demonstrate their professional experience. And that includes individuals who don't have the B average, people who don't have their undergraduate degree, people who have college programs. We need to see your professional experience to supplement the lower GPA or the lack of an undergraduate degree. And again, access pathway candidates are not, they're equally valued when it comes to the admission process. It's just an additional requirement for those individuals to submit resumes. So just keep that in mind. It's there for anybody who doesn't quite have that B average. And again, you really need to think about your own studies, review your transcript, really think about if you meet that B average. Again, at Queen's, the B average is a minimum 73% on a 100% scale. So GPA wise on a 4.3 system, it's a 3.0. So keep that in mind. If I attended 2 universities, do I submit both transcripts? Yes, submit everything that you've attended or completed. So again, that's letter of permission. If you did any student exchange programs, if you just attended a school for 1 university credit that was going back to your home institution, submit everything. English test scores are rigid. It is a huge requirement. And the reason for that is because the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants used to have the English language proficiency test score requirement for those who are going to be taking the entry to practice exam. They no longer require that because Queen's requires that of our applicants. It's a must. We are not really flexible. We're not flexible on that at all. You need to have those scores that are required. Again, with the IELTS, it's an overall 7.0, no band lower than 7.0. With CALE, it's an overall score of 70. And with TOEFL, I believe the internet-based is 101 minimum score and the paper-based 601 minimum score. Those are requirements and you must have them submitted. Somebody's asking if they have a master's degree in English literature, do you have to provide the language proficiency test? If English is not your native language, and if that master's degree is older than 1 year from the date of your application, you're going to have to submit an English language proficiency test. That's the requirement. I have my transcript on my postgraduate studies, and I will finish my business admin January 2023. Can I catch up the fall term? Don't quite understand catch up the fall term, but you would apply for fall 2023. You wouldn't need to, you wouldn't have a finalized transcript in preparation for winter by the September 15th deadline. So just be mindful of that. Know what you're applying for. We really encourage, we don't want anybody to waste their application money. If you're not going to have a finalized transcript, if you're currently enrolled in a program and you're not going to have something finalized by September 15th, I wouldn't encourage you to apply for winter. I would encourage you to apply for fall. When it comes to your professional experience and what's relevant for the program, we'll accept much. There's a lot of relevancy when it comes to interacting with clients, working with individuals, paperwork, communication, lots of things like that. We will review whatever you have. It's just important to have that resume ready to go for anybody who is applying under the access pathway. Yeah, for anybody who has studies more than a year old, you're going to have to really consider that English language proficiency test. I'm seeing a lot of older dates, 1995, 5 years ago, 2 years ago. Really start looking into what is the availability for the ELPTs. And again, all the exemption information is on our website. You can go ahead and find that as listed here on the screen. I think I'm just going to do 2 more questions and then we'll close it up. I'm going to see if there's anything unique that we haven't seen yet. Application fee is $110. That one's not going to count. What kind of documents are requested from references? That's an excellent question. So references actually receive a form. They will receive an emailed form in their email address that basically just outlines what their interactions have been with you and some various levels of consideration for your professional or academic experience. It's 3 pages. They provide statements for each section. They provide a rating on how you did in certain components. And they have the opportunity to upload some documents if they have a letter of reference for you. So just again, make sure your references receive their emails. You have up-to-date emails for them. You enter it correctly into the application. And then double check to make sure that you log into the system and you see the materials that are provided to you. Or for you on your behalf, I should say. I'm going to find one question. For anybody who's raised your hand, we're not going to be able to do anything specific. I'm really sorry. My encouragement would be if you have anything specific to your application, go ahead and email us at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. All of the information about the access pathway is available on our website. There's some pretty extensive information there under our FAQs, as well as our admissions page. Let's see if I can find one more. So I will go through the definition we've been using for a native English speaker is an individual who has been operating or speaking in English their entire lives, and English was not something that they had to learn as a second language. So that's kind of the general definition we've been utilizing. But again, there's some flexibility within there. Again, there are countries globally that are not North American countries where English is the only primary language or the only native language or one of 2. We really need you to be comfortable and able to function within a very intensive academic environment in English. So even if you are second guessing your ability, it would probably be encouraged for you to take a look at the English language proficiency test score. We want you to be successful in the program. And again, it is a cost. but it's minimal in the grand scheme of things when it comes to taking our program and potentially not being able to be successful there and not being able to drop before the document or before the drop deadline and losing out on tuition fees. So think about this as kind of a preventative measure for future potential disappointment. One final question here. I'm just going to go ahead and grab it. And we'll go ahead and ELPTs must be submitted with the application. Well, not with your application, but before the application document deadline. We don't accept things after you receive an offer. So if you're waiting for a conditional offer of admission from us based on your ELPT scores, that's not coming. We need to see your ELPT scores in order to provide you an offer of admission. Transcripts in other languages are valid only with certificate translation. Yes, that's a very good question to end on. If you have international documents that you have in your possession, if they have translations, that's the way that we can accept them. We cannot accept anything that's not in English. We unfortunately don't have those translation abilities in our offices. So if you have your own transcripts, have them translated, you can submit the original transcript and the translation with your application. I think that's where we'll end. This has been a fantastic, well-attended event. We're going to be hosting another one of these sometime in June. So again, on the screen is our website and our Facebook page. Follow us on Facebook, give us a like, and follow our page so that you know when the video of this session comes up and when we're going to be holding future sessions. Also, if you haven't already, sign up for our mail out, our distribution list. You can find that on our program site, immigrationdiploma.queenslaw.ca. Thank you very much to everyone who attended today's session. Hopefully I've answered your questions. If I haven't, go ahead and email us, immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. We'll be taking our time getting back to everybody, but I think this was a fantastic session and we just appreciate everyone's attendance. So go ahead and visit those pages, watch for the video of this, let us know if you have any questions, and good luck in any future application you have for our program. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.